Welcome back to the transmission, friends. You watch UAP Troop 33. I'm John, and today we're going to dive deep into some new developments in the UAP UFO news subject. And not only that, but a lot of the things about bases, craft, and Rep Burleson. I'm going to show you a clip from him. I'm going to show you a clip from Jeremy Corbell talking about specific locations where they know that the United States have been keeping recovered craft, have been back engineering the technology, and that Rep Burleson actually visited one of these sites. So you're going to want to stay tuned. It's going to be an awesome episode. Be right back.
I spent the entire day with the White House staff, almost the entire day, and into the late evening. And at one point in that conversation, I said, look, while I've got you, I said, this has this has nothing to do with how I will vote on this bill. But since you're here, I need your help. And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm on this team. We're tasked with doing this, but we keep getting the hand in the face every time we request anything. We keep getting blocked. We keep getting told that, that we don't have access or that we don't have a need to know. And he said, well, what do you want? And I said, okay, what I want is I want a White House level briefing. Same briefing that the president, if you're taking the request, that's my highest request. Furthermore, I would like to be able to have a green light to go visit some of these locations. And the gentleman that I was asking kind of smirked. And I said, is this comical to you? Is this, do you think that this is, I'm not a serious person? He said, no, he goes, I just want to go with you. And so,
wow.
And turns out he did. He was able to go with me. He had to follow the proper channels as well. And we visited the first of many sites, hopefully. I'm going to be cautious in talking about that because I don't want to jeopardize the ability to go to the remaining locations, if you will. I truly think that for them, this was a test of whether or not this would become a circus for them. And so I think that I'm just treading cautiously before I release too much information about what I've learned and where I went.
So Jeremy Corbell was on none other than Duncan Tressel's podcast, which is just an awesome, entertaining podcast that's just hilariously funny. But they got serious about UFOs, right? And Jeremy Corbell was talking about this location, Pax River, which I believe is in Maryland. And at this location, he stated that his sources high up in government have informed him that there is definitely a craft there and that they're actually in the process of trying to reverse engineer this stuff. Now, I don't know how you would even begin to do this, right? Because from what I understand, these metamaterials are like built from the atoms up, that these civilizations are so far ahead of us that we can't even begin to understand the technologies that they have, use, and utilize. And I just found it to be a very interesting interview. Please check out this clip. I'll be right back.
Anna Paulina Luna, under Rep Luna, who's a badass. She's got like Representative Burchett and Burleson doing really high-level sophisticated meetings, working with whistleblowers I brought forward. Like they mentioned Matthew Brown. He's a resource for them, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so like David Grush as well.
Yeah.
And they are actively pursuing the leads of trying to get access to where some of the NHI, non-human intelligence-made craft are, as well as biologics.
Wow.
They've been giving locations. I think very famously, Lou Elizondo pointed to Pax River as a location where there was a facility built out for $10 million to hold the non-human intelligence craft. So I'm not saying that, I'm not breaking any rules, and you could say whatever you want about Lou Elizondo. He's a spook, he's not a spook. The information is correct.
Can you pull up Pax River
Yeah.
UAP?
I've been warned not to like talk about this. Fuck that, man. It's all out in the news.
And Stephen Greer has also come out lately and been speaking about a lot of the things being rumbled about by Trump, Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, and apparently he has connections with these people. Apparently he's spoken to Pete Hegseth personally. So I want you guys to watch this clip, and I don't know what you guys think. I always found Stephen Greer to be kind of, I'm not going to lie, I went back and forth with the guy, but he did kind of reveal the CE5 protocols. That was like my launching off point with the consciousness connections with the UAP. Prior to that, I pretty much viewed it as all nuts and bolts. Now, my understanding of this is um, expanded greatly, just based off of my own experiences with not only seeing things, but also experiences with the synchronistic events that surround this phenomenon and how it's able to touch people in their personal lives in ways that kind of defy understanding. And it's just a really interesting interview where he's speaking about how this is such a complex issue that a lot of the UAPs that we see in the sky are actually our craft that we have been able to build based off of non-human craft that we have been trying to understand and back engineer. And he's claiming that this is such a complex issue that there's these religious kind of kooks, if you will. And listen, look, I pray, I believe in God. It's nothing like, I have nothing against anybody's religion or anybody's beliefs. But whenever you try to pigeonhole this huge, gigantic, complex phenomenon into a angels and demons type of reference point, I kind of push back on that whole philosophy. I don't think demons or angels need flying saucers. Um, if these are disembodied spirits or whatever you believe, it just kind of flies in the face of reason that they would need a nuts and bolts craft, right? So please, I want you guys to check out this interview with Stephen Greer, where I feel like he really broke down the whole phenomenon into. He covered it very well. So please watch this. I'll be right back.
And demonic forces. I think many of us already believe that and know that.
Well, the problem here is a confusion amongst the various phenomena, plural. And this has been a problem for decades, and it's deliberate. For example, there are interstellar extraterrestrial civilizations that, in order to go from A to B through the universe, are crossing through other dimensions. They do not originate from another dimension. There are also phenomena from other dimensions that are extra-dimensional or interdimensional. These are deliberately being conflated and confused to gaslight low information people in public life and in the media for its psychological warfare value. That's it. Now, to unpack that, you have to understand that beginning in the early 90s, I discovered that there were people who had an agenda related to their religiosity as opposed to religion per se, to try to confuse and conflate all of this together. Now, the biggest part of this is also that at least 80% or more of the UAP seen are our man-made reverse engineered craft, but even the extra-dimensional and interdimensional phenomenon can be stimulated from advanced electromagnetic systems that can pull something out from one dimension into this one, and that has been weaponized by covert human operations. So I think that it's extremely complex. Mr. Hegseth has a very tall order to fill, and I know people on my team who are close with him as well as with the president. We're working to get key information to them. There's going to be a lot of confusion on this because ufology is an amalgam of multiple phenomena being called the same thing, and they aren't. I very comically relate to being with Pope John Paul's senior theologian at the Vatican in the 90s, Monsignor Balducci, and we discussed this, and this was been in probably the mid to late 90s, and he said, look, and he was a demonologist, by the way. His specialty was demonology for the Vatican. And he said, neither angels nor demons require flying saucers. So I think one of the problems here is that you have religious fanatic agendas that are overrunning national security concerns and scientific concerns, and this has been deliberately done. I know that since at least the 50s and 60s, this silly game has been played within CIA and DoD circles.
We would learn that they're interdependent.
And when I watched that interview, it reminded me of the things that Chris Bledsoe said, that there's actually people, these elites that are higher up in government, the corporate world, the media world, that are trying to bring about, basically script the book of Revelations. I believe that was an actual quote from Chris Bledsoe, and that these people are actively working to bring this about, and it kind of reminds me of, the intelligence officials and Leslie Kean with the New York Times talking about this 2027 event and how the world's going to be vastly different than what it is today. And Leslie Kean says, we're not going to enjoy the things that we take for granted today. But they're not specifying what this event's going to be. And I've covered it repeatedly, especially in the last few months, because I feel like a lot of these things are coming to a head now, right? A lot of the predictions Chris Bledsoe has made are actually coming to pass today. We're watching it in real time. Look at the conflict in the Middle East right now. And Chris Bledsoe told us this was going to happen, and also there's been a reemergence of UFO sightings, UAP sightings in and around New Jersey. Why New Jersey is the hotspot, I'm really not sure. There was a UFO sighting in Santa Fe, New Mexico that I recently posted on a short, and it was being pretty much tracked by a military helicopter, and a guy was in his car recording it. And I found that to be very, very interesting, because New Mexico is really a hotbed of activity right now in the whole UFO community. This is where General William Neil McCaslin came up missing. He just went for a run. They said he was very healthy. He had actually took like a 20-mile bike ride like a couple of days prior to his disappearance. So he was at the epitome of health and mental well-being. And there was people trying to say he had dementia. That's false. Now, I think a lot of people thought that because of the silver alert. According to Ross Coulthart, this silver alert was probably just because, he probably takes meds or medication, for high blood pressure or something like that he needs. So they just issued the silver alert. But isn't it interesting that the Air Force OSI, Office of Special Investigations, is assisting the sheriff of Bernalillo County in this search. And I'm very suspicious of that, right? Because this is the guy that knows. He's the guy that oversaw Wright Pat. He's the guy that pretty much handled the Air Force's laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And this was the location where the crash from Roswell went. This is the location where the crash from Kecksburg, Pennsylvania went. And the fact that he oversaw this laboratory, and now whenever Trump says he's going to declassify these files, he's going to, he put Pete Hegseth on it, who is Secretary of War. Tulsi Gabbard actually made a post about it. And whenever he makes this announcement on Truth Social and, to the public, all of a sudden, within a week, William Neil McCaslin, the one guy who can answer a lot of these questions about this whole legacy program of crash retrievals, comes up missing. It's just the timing of it is really suspicious. Listen, in this day and age, we're seeing that a lot of the conspiracy theories of the past are coming true. So why wouldn't we automatically be suspicious of his disappearance at a time when Trump made this announcement? The one guy that could tell us about these programs.
Release all the classified files on UFOs and aliens, and you posted after that, an enormous secret is buried here. I have failed to guess it year after year. What did you mean by that?
We have a puzzle that I can't solve. There is more accumulated anecdotal, circumstantial, and sporadic evidence of an enormous program about UFOs than I know how to dismiss. I've talked to people who have strikingly similar firsthand accounts of bizarre behavior, either in terms of objects in the skies or the seas, or seeming U.S. government employees with no insignia and no identification behaving in bizarre ways. I can't explain the amount of firsthand claims from non-actors delivered with perfect sincerity that would make Hollywood blush if there isn't a reality behind it. Now, sometimes we get a look at that. For example, there's a private Air Force that seems to come down from the skies and destroy equipment of people observing UFOs that I think turned out to be the CIA's Office of Global Access. I wasn't smart enough to figure out how you could hide an Air Force inside of the United States from a breakaway society, but I think it was just the CIA. So, that was bad for me. I didn't get that right. I think what you're seeing is that there's probably a very long-standing program, particularly involving physics, and particularly involving aerospace companies, not as aerospace as we know it, but as shells in which you can put very sensitive stuff that could be FOIA'd if it was found inside of government. I don't know what's in that structure. I think Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is going to be very important. There's a site in Indiana, several in New Mexico. My guess is that you're going to find out that a lot of these stories, just take New Mexico. New Mexico is going to be the hub that connects atomic weapons, UFOs, and Jeffrey Epstein. And they're all going to merge into one story about power that we don't understand. Human power is going to be centered in a state that we barely ever talk about, and including Bill Richardson at the Department of Energy, which of course is really the custodian of physics and our nuclear weapons that Jimmy Carter converted from the AEC, where atomic energy was the cover story for atomic weapons. So we went from atomic weapons to atomic energy to just energy, and now we sound like Bill Richardson went there to be the head of oil.
Donald Trump is not.
So I wanted to show you that clip with Eric Weinstein talking to Pierce Morgan. And this is another angle that we need to really look at, because Eric Weinstein has been very vocal and also very, very curious about this whole subject, and he can't figure it out. One of the smartest men, that I know of, has been following this subject for as long as a lot of us, right? Well, maybe not that long, but he's been talking about this for years, and he's been trying to get to the bottom of it. He's been, rattling the cage of all his sources, trying to figure out what is going on with the whole UAP phenomenon. And he still can't figure it out. But the one thing that he did say was that it's going to culminate in New Mexico. This is the place where it began with Roswell. And he says this is the place where it's going to culminate, and it's going to have to do with Epstein, nuclear power, and UFOs. And hopefully we get an answer to what all this actually means for humanity. And I think the reason why he's unable to get to the bottom of it is because it's such an elusive subject. It's one of those things that kind of hangs out on the edge of our consciousness. It lets us know it's here. It lets us know what's going, that there's a there, but it doesn't come out into the open. It doesn't let anybody kind of get to the bottom of the subject. Maybe there is people who have gotten to the bottom of it, that know exactly what it is, but I don't think so. I think even the people that have the craft, even the people who have maybe seen the biologics or the bodies or whatever, they still don't know the source of where these beings come from. They don't know the source of, where these craft were constructed. A lot of people claim that you need a zero gravity environment to actually recreate a lot of these metamaterials. So I'm going to show you a clip by Robert Bigelow where he kind of references this. And he says he almost had in his possession, in one of his labs, a UFO.
Leaving out, the kind of the holy grail of the topic, machinery.
Yeah. Is there machinery? That's what the New York Times story, which we'll talk about in a second. New York Times reported that you modified your facility here in order to house some material from somewhere else. Did you ever have it?
We never had any.
Do you ever see it?
You don't want to talk about stuff in case it happens.
Yeah.
In the future.
Yeah.
And because who knows what might happen in terms of coalescing of intersections that could happen. And so
you don't want to spill any beans that causes you, it puts you in a bad light somewhere down the road.
well, I think that machinery really does exist. It does exist, and so, but the problem has been the inability to back engineer. And I kind of think that some things require a weightless environment. So part of that is we don't have it here terrestrially. So what you need is a manufacturing facility where there's a weightless environment.
So there you go. There's Robert Bigelow. So here we go. I've shown you Stephen Greer, what he said about this whole disclosure thing, this push right now. Pete Hegseth, he talks about him. I showed you Eric Weinstein and what he thinks, how this is going to culminate in New Mexico. And it has to do with some of these people that are involved are despicable individuals. It's just strange, there's this push by certain influencers to try to pigeonhole this subject into it's demons, it's elites praying to aliens, these crazy ideas. Then you have the Chris Bledsoes with the predictions and the experiences. And then you have the nuts and bolts aspect, where you have Jeremy Corbell saying that, hey, they have a craft at Pax River in Maryland. Ross Coulthart saying that there's a UFO that's so big that they had to build a building around it, and that it's in another country. Some people say it's South Korea. You have Eric Burleson saying that he's been to locations where they've been reverse engineering non-human technology, non-human craft. I don't know. So I showed you all these aspects to what's going on right now in the UFO world, right? Stephen Greer, he's actually briefing these high-level officials about how to come out and tell the American people. So it's a fascinating time to be alive. And at the same time, you have this huge conflict in the Middle East. And Chris Bledsoe is saying that there's people in power, elites in and outside of government, who are trying to bring about basically the end of the world, trying to script the book of Revelations. So not only is it an exciting, fascinating time to be alive, it's also kind of scary. And I don't know where you guys stand. I know where I stand. I'm choosing light, man. And not getting caught up in the negativity about this. I think it's like anything. There's good and bad in everything. And I think this phenomenon is the same way, right? I'm sure there's good and bad beings. Lynn Buchanan was recently on the Aubrey Marcus podcast, and I might leave a clip of that. I'm not sure. Where he's saying that, look, it's not us and them. It's us, them, that there's all these different beings and different types of beings. There may be beings from Zeta Reticuli. There may be beings that exist right here with us, just in some type of extra dimensional reality that we can't interact with yet. Maybe we're elevating consciously, and now they want to actually open contact with us. Maybe they believe that we're ready. But if we keep doing the things that we're doing in the Middle East right now, I'm worried about what that contact will look like, right? But I am interested. Maybe there is a power greater than these governments and these media and people who try to control the narrative. And I would hope that if there is, that they would be benevolent. But I don't know. What do you guys think, man? Let me know. Hit me up in the comments. If you think all this is just straight up BS, you can say that too. I'm interested. I'm open to everything. We can talk. There's dialogue. We don't have to call each other names or sling mud. We can do this in an intelligent manner and try to get to the bottom of the truth. But if you like what you're seeing here, please hit the subscribe, like, share it to a friend, share it to 2 friends. Peace.